Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 413 of the MTG Goldfish podcast. I'm Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and we have the full crew here this week, kicking things off with the owner of MTG Goldfish, Richard. Happy holidays. How are you today, Richard?
Happy holidays, Seth. I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I am doing super well, and we got a really fun topic, a once-a-year annual tradition topic for today. But before we get into that, we got another co-host in Krim. Good morning, Krim. How are you today?
Morning. Pretty excited to see what's going on today on some of the misses and who knows what. I can't wait to see the clips.
So as Krim hinted at here, we are doing our year in review podcast where we go back over the last year of mostly spoiler predictions that Krim and I do and from the podcast and see what we got right, what we got wrong. It should be pretty interesting because it has been a wild year of Magic. So before we jump into that, a quick reminder that our show today is brought to you by Card Conduit. And Card Conduit, they're the easiest way to sell your Magic cards. If you're tired of all the hassles that go into buy listing your cards, well, Card Conduit lets you skip all the typing and all the time and all their work. With their curated service, you can send in as many cards as you want with a buy list value of $1 or more and pay just a 5% service fee. And if you want to put in a little effort on your end, you can use their sorted service where you list and sort your cards ahead of time and pay just a 2% fee. And no matter which one you choose, you're going to get a detailed report with their results and a fast payment once the order is processed. And right now, you can even get another 10% off by heading over to cardconduit.com/mtggoldfish. Card Conduit, they're the easiest way to sell your Magic cards, so thank you to Card Conduit for supporting the show. And with our sponsorship stuff out of the way, let's bounce it over to Richard, who's going to guide us through the last year of Magic, Goldfish prediction style. Richard, take it away.
All right. Our wonderful editor, Nieduk, has thrown together a bunch of clips. Some from the podcast, a lot from the top 10 videos you guys do. So I may get away from this one. Richard doesn't get audited, it's fine. But we're gonna go over some of the top hits, some of the top misses, some of the top omissions. We're gonna cover the major standard sets this year: Crimson Vow, Neon Dynasty, Capenna, Dominaria United. No Brothers War because we were in Vegas when Brothers War happened, so we didn't put out those videos. But maybe if you guys have any comments on that. But to kick things off, we're actually going to revisit last year's year in review, where we had Midnight Hunt, but Midnight Hunt just released. It was a new standard, and not much has happened. So we're just gonna revisit with our first clip on Midnight Hunt here to see where we're at.
Number one on our list, top card for standard from Innistrad Midnight Hunt, we have Bloodthirsty Adversary. Another adversary, the red adversary. Krim, what do you think about this one?
This is a Dark Dweller that can scale, and they scale very well, like quite well with whatever game plan you have. It's as simple as that. This can now cast a bunch of spells back and forth. This is good in a control deck. This could be good in an aggro deck in case you want to cast your burn spells again. What's not to love? It's versatile. It goes in every deck that has red.
This card's really, really good. And at 5 mana, if you flash back a 3 mana value spell, it's actually just Snapcaster Mage. Not with Flash, but still, it's the same amount of mana as Snapcaster would be to flash back something that had a 3 mana value. Plus, you're getting a 2/2 haste for 2, which is traditionally a pretty playable card in aggressive decks. So yeah, I think Bloodthirsty Adversary. This card is a card you can play in control decks, you can play it in aggro decks. It's even a vampire, which is probably going to be more relevant in a couple of months once we get Crimson Vow. But still, this is definitely deserving of the top spot on our list and a super strong standard card.
Number one.
Have you played against this card? This card is good. It's still good. I get bodied by it all the time in Historic.
I haven't really seen many people play it in standard.
But I also still think that this card still has lots of time to grow. This card it may not be in every deck right now, but this card, I just don't see how it's not going to get played. I still am high on this card.
And it's worth pointing out for both Innistrad sets, unlike the first sets we talked about, they still have like 2 years in standard. Like they're only a couple months old. So we still have 22 months of these cards existing in standard. So I think you're right. There is a chance that at some point during that time, Bloodthirsty Adversary actually takes off.
I think the biggest miss is no one expected the demise of red aggro, right? Like red aggro is always a thing. So I actually agree with Krim. Like of all the misses here, this one actually has potential to do something still in the right metagame. Whereas fighter class, stuff like that.
Okay.
Zagreus,
right, that card's
maybe
back.
the ship has sailed on those ones, but this one has potential still. All right, 1 year later.
We're
1 year later,
we're good.
Where's Bloodthirsty Adversary? How has this shaken out?
Okay, so good news, bad news. I mean, I guess the bad news is Shieldred and so forth are really good against mono red, so mono red's still not as good as it has been in the past. But if you look at standard mono red decks, pretty much every single one is playing 4 copies of Bloodthirsty Adversary. So I think Krim's theory of give it some time, I think you were proven right in this one, Krim. I'm pretty sure.
Whew. I was like, oh man, wait, hold on, because I was worried about that. Hearing it back, I was like, wow, mono red is actually was nowhere in sight when Meatball Massacre was around. But with the banning, I've been seeing a lot more mono red, and yeah, exactly that. We've seen Bloodthirsty Adversary, so I even see it in Historic and in Explorer. So yeah, it's good, yeah?
Yeah,
it's still good.
If you look at the most played creatures in Standard right now, it's mostly a list of black and white creatures. Those are the dominant creatures, but Bloodthirsty Adversary is literally the most played red creature in the format. It's 24th overall, but it is literally the most played mono red creature, so I think we are right. I mean, I also think we had it number 1 overall in Innistrad Midnight Hunt, which maybe that is a little bit too high. Maybe we were still a little ambitious with it, but it certainly has proven itself to be a very playable standard card.
All right, I'll give you guys a B. So yes, it's played in mono red, but there are much better red decks that don't play it at all. Grixis, Mardu, Rakdos.
Oh my god, those are red decks, Richard. Those
are
black
red
decks.
And you know what the best red creature is? It's Bloodtithe Harvester. That's the staple, right? So yes, Bloodthirsty Adversary is played in mono red, so it got there, but it's not played anywhere red can be played, right? So
that's true.
It's a win and a loss at the same time, I think. And number 1 is it actually number 1 card from Crimson Vow? Or
it was our
Midnight Hunt?
It was I believe it was our number 1 overall. Yeah, if you look at our combined list or whatever. So yeah.
Yep.
But is there currently a more played Midnight Hunt? Because Midnight Hunt was kind of a doo-doo, right? Is there actually a more played card? It may actually be number 1, just power crept by everything else.
Yeah, some random Meat Hook was up there before it got banned. Memory Deluge or Inferno Grasp were ranked below it, so it's not that far down.
Infernal Grasp still good.
It's been a sad stretch for mono red because I think so. When we recorded that podcast, I think that was the dominance of green, where we just played Pack Leader and Durley green stuff, and then we went straight into Meatball Shouldred meta, and then after that, even then, mono red is still a pretty kind of fringe deck. The value piles are still outdoing it. So,
and now we have Obliterator coming just to slam the door shut on anyone who thinks they're going to attack with burn spells and little red creatures. So I think maybe this prediction will look worse a year from now that Obliterator is coming out too.
I don't know what mono red's gonna do against Obliterator or Shieldred because I don't know what's worse. But hey, there was a point. Bloodthirsty Adversary was sick. It's still pretty decent, and you know what? It's in Historic, so I'll take it.
I got with Bloodthirsty Adversary while playing Standard. I got they flashback a lightning strike or whatever. I'm like, oh no.
Yeah. But I also understand that the uncommons, whatever the 3/2 is, I forgot the name, but you mentioned it. the Rakdos one that makes a blood token.
I was not ready. The standard card of all time, the Blood Tithe Harvester.
Somehow Blood Tithe Harvester is just absurdly cracked, and I have no idea why or how I missed that. So I guess that
is Crimson Vow. Oh no, we'll have Crimson Vow coming up in this podcast. Let's see if you guys found this uncommon that no one knew, but is actually like the linchpin of standard.
Somehow.
Okay, so it's 2023 coming up soon. We're a year wiser. In 2021, we asked, what do you want in 2022? And did anyone say $1,000 proxies? I'm not sure, so we're going to have to go back and listen to this clip to see what our wish list was in 2022 and see if Santa came and delivered. All right, so wrapping up 2021, I'll ask you guys one question. What do you want to see in 2022 Magic? Could be anything.
The one thing I hope to see, I would love to see a thriving standard, whatever, alchemy, either or one of those formats doing well, because I've always played standard in my entire life. I've loved standard, and to be honest with you, some of the best times I've had playing Magic would be in standard. But I would love to see a format that is enjoyable. Standard has been in a bit of a rut for a little while. So I just want to see a good standard again. And I mean, I know it'll be a lot to ask for it to be like as good as the Ravnica, most recent Ravnica Return, whatever set. But like something along those lines.
Oh, I'm going to cheat a little bit. I got two. One is I want less snowball threats. Powerful creatures are fine, but give us powerful creatures that don't just win the game by themselves if they go unchecked. I think that's my biggest frustration with standard and alchemy in those formats now is just these 2-drops that like if you don't kill this, it essentially beats you over the course of a couple of turns. Rahilda's and Werewolf Pack Leaders and Ranger class. There's many threats like in Ragavan in older formats to some extent. So I would like to see less of those. Number 2 is Companions Acorned in all formats. Please, I don't want another year of Luris in Modern. I'm so sick of it. The mechanics are horrible. The cards are horrible. Go away, please. Companions. That's my Christmas wish for this year.
I agree with you guys. I'm going to add on, I want to see less text on cards. I can measure this. We're going to measure how long daily spoiler videos are next year. Every year they keep going up in length as Wizards adds more text and more sides and like more like transforms and stuff to cards. Like just keep it simple. Like it was a great game. We don't need to make it overcomplicated and like scare away new players. All right, Crim, you were a good boy this year. I think they delivered on Crim and Seth's requests. I think they just took mine and threw it in the trash because I think they just doubled the number of words on cards this year.
Again, yeah. Really though, Standard's been good. Like Standard's been good. The snowbally threats I think have been toned down. Honestly, like when the best card in Standard is Shieldred and it's got to sit out for a bunch of turns and it doesn't draw you a card or ETB, that's a pretty good place to be compared to Uros and Ragavan. So I think we did get our wishes, except for Richard.
Yeah, most of us. Richard got Cole apparently because there's with Cole that also has text on it, of course. I'm just happy that Standard and the threats feel like they're like getting like powered down, although like still very potent. Like it's been solid, just like Seth had mentioned. If Shieldred and it's a bunch of like mid-range fests and stuff like that, like I'm here for that. So I loved Standard this past year, and I'm happy to see it like doing well again.
Yeah, I think the only snowballing threat is maybe Rafine, but everything else is like fine. Like you can actually like take a couple hits and then actually come back, which is why Standard is actually mid-range fest right now. Like nothing just like, I guess Fable is the other one, but at least your snowballing threats are coming down on 3 and not 1. Like
seriously. Coming from like Werewolf Pack Leader and Ranger class and all these just like, I do this thing and you don't kill it and it gives me this insurmountable advantage. I can deal with things snowballing like later in the game. I think that's okay. I still think Fable's like super busted. That card's so strong, but I'm okay with the snowball starting a little bit later. And really, even then, we don't have too many of those cards at the top of Standard right now.
All right, Crip,
Yeah,
is this better?
we
better
don't
than
have-
Return to Ravnica standard,
No.
or is that still the golden standard?
That's still the golden standard. If I don't know if it gets better than that. That was, or at least it hasn't yet. It has a chance to, but like, my God, that was a good standard. I really love that standard.
Do you
Grixis on the top of the metagame, and Krim is still not happy.
are you
Yeah.
are you
It's
still
just
enjoying
Grixis
standard?
mid-range and not
Krim?
control.
Yeah, I'm still digging the standard. I've been also loving historic. But like, I just feel like almost all the 60 card formats got a lot better this year. If somehow like possible.
I will say
Right.
I'm getting tired of standard. Like, I think standard got way better compared to last year, but you can only play so many Grixis mirrors in a row before it's like, okay, I've already done this. It's not that it's bad. It's maybe not for Krim, but for me, eventually it's like, oh my God, like, again, come on. I want to record a video where every match is not an hour long for once, Wizards. Where's the
Did
aggro?
Brothers 4 bring anything into standard besides like the soldiers deck? All the other decks kind of look the same, right?
No, I mean, there's been some fringe upgrades. Like you see, like Blade Coil Serpent or Phyrexian, whatever the 3-drop,
Yeah.
is. Like you see some individual cards, but there haven't
thingy.
flesh, bag or flesh
Well,
bag Marauder,
Portal
whatever.
to Phyrexia, that's been popping up too, along with Cityscape Leveler. So actually, yeah, Brothers War has done a lot, and you do see Go for the Throat. So like it's had pretty good cards actually.
But there haven't been too many decks, I would say. Like outside of soldiers, are there any decks that are like Brothers War decks at this point? That are actually tier decks. I know that you can build like tons of different things, but I feel like that's the only real Brothers War deck. Or maybe like Sacrifice kind of made a little bit of a comeback with like Saheeli and the equipment that draws you a card whenever stuff dies. So maybe you could argue Mishra's Research Desk. Maybe you can argue that's a Brothers War deck, but I don't know. Standard's still better than it was last year for sure. That much is clear.
What?
All
yeah.
right. So let's get into what year is it? 2022 proper Crimson Vow.
Oh boy.
Let's see what our top hit from Crimson Vow was.
The number one card on our list happens to be a bit of a tax effect. Thalia, Guardian of Thraben, which it's a reprint. I think it's the most impactful card for a new standard format. We already have White Weenie being really good in the format. I don't know, this card, I think this card is going to have a massive impact on standard. But Krim, what do you think about our returning Human Soldier?
This is my number 2, right? I think this card is very, very powerful, and combined with like Spellbinder, there's tons of ways to slow opponents down now, right? So
yeah,
I really like this card. I think this is going to be huge for standard. Like I want to make it known though. Do I think this card just stone cold shuts down? Is it? No. I feel like it does get outclassed in like a green matchup, but that's because that's green, right? So, like otherwise though, any of the non-creature heavy decks, like Seth had mentioned, Dimir, is it all of that? This is going to be an all-star there and going to be what you want onto every time. I see like start of week 1, day 1 of standard. I would play 4 copies of this.
Thalia, not too much of a stretch.
No, I mean,
Yeah,
yes, it's right, but like, how much should we really do on this prediction? Like, it's a reprint. We already knew it was a good card, so I feel like it's kind of like a safe choice, but it is the correct choice. It was very good, and it still is very good, and it is helpful and maybe responsible for letting like mono white and soldiers and some of those decks be able to compete with some of the like spell heavy decks. So, right choice, but not really a complicated one.
I feel like also one thing that is lost on that clip though is the context of the standard format we were like coming from, and Thalia was much more than just. It was just sorely needed. It was sorely needed in this standard, and like when it hit, it like God, this card annoys me every time in standard. But it was really needed because we just came from like a wild, kind of like Goldspan dragon filled, like kind of like standard, right? So this was what I felt like was a very important part of the meta. It was very, very needed. So it's a safe choice, but my God, was it needed?
I mean,
Yeah,
it's easy to forget a year ago at this time. Like, Alrund's Epiphany and Divide by Zero were like the top thing with Goldspan Dragon. That was what Standard was about. And then in January, they ended up banning those cards. So
Yeah.
So Thalia sees play in Rafine decks and Soldier decks. The funny thing is, like, Thalia's extremely good because we have a lot of spells, like, for example, Fable, Meatball Massacre, things like that when that was still legal. The problem is white has its own spells it wants to play most of the time, like Wedding Announcement, Wandering Emperor. So, like, white decks usually don't play it, and it's only, like, the creature-only decks, which would be Soldiers and Rafine, that play it. So I find it funny that this time around, Thalia actually taxed a lot of white's best cards, like Eigenjo, stuff like that. So you kind of actually really got hosed by playing Thalia yourself. And I, for one, have certainly played Thalia, skipped turn 3 because I drew a Wedding Announcement and can no longer play it. Sad face. So that's a pretty interesting dynamic.
That's just the Thalia tax. Oh, Thalia.
Thalia collects her money.
that is a good point, though, that it doesn't go into every white deck. It doesn't even go into, like, the most popular white deck right now is, like, the mono white mid-range. Used to be the Invoke Justice Reanimator style deck, but I can't play it because it's got too many spells, like you said.
But who foresaw mono white mid-range, right? Like coming into the meta. I never thought I'd see it.
I mean, that's
mono white control or whatever.
I think that's, like, when you look at some of our picks that go wrong, I think that's an easy way for them to go wrong. Because it's like, oh, we think, going back to, like, Knights a few years ago, you think that the tribe's going to be good. So you pick what you think is going to be a good card for this tribe or archetype, and then it doesn't actually work out. And then you look horribly foolish as a result.
All right. Speaking of looking foolish, let's look at our top miss from Crimson Vow.
Oh, boy.
Number 4 on our list, we have one of my favorite cards from the set, Overcharged Amalgam, our new flashy, exploiting, counter-spelling zombie. And this is weird. I feel like we're in Bizarro world this set, Krim, because a lot of these, like, control cards I'm really high on, and then when I talk to you, you're not as high on these cards as I am, which is really, really strange. Overcharged Amalgam, I think, is a really sweet card for the exploit deck. Like, to the point where I think this is the reason to play the exploit deck. If you're having to exploit this to itself, then it's a pretty bad counter spell. But in those kind of, like, tempo-y, tokeny, sacrifice, exploit style decks, I feel like this is, like, one of the reasons to play those archetypes in Standard, one of the biggest ones. But what do you think about this one, Krim?
So I do like the card. Like, it's definitely on my list. I think we're about the same on ranking it. I like the card. All around, like you had mentioned, this card just has a lot of stuff that it can sack or exploit to get some serious value here. And then if you get to, at the end of it all, you get a 3/3 flying flash threat. That's awesome, right? So I think this is a very good tempo play, a very good rate.
Why?
So I actually don't think this is that bad of a pick, honestly.
Why?
It's one of those cards where the archetype kind of flopped. Like, zombies and exploit just haven't really been good enough, even though they got a lot of pieces. I still think if they were good enough, this probably would be one of the better cards in that deck. Like, it is really powerful, but the archetype just didn't make it. So obviously, in terms of just, like, how much play it's seen, it's wrong, but I don't think it's the Overcharged. What I'm trying to say is I don't think it's the Overcharged Amalgam itself is a bad card. It's more that the decks that it goes in just haven't been as good as I was hoping they would be.
Yeah, I agree with that. To save my own face here, like I do think the card is solid. I'm just surprised one of the most popular tribes wasn't good, right? It was like zombies are real bad. Like, actually unplayable. They didn't have, like, a graph digger, like some kind of recursive, like, thing going on. Like, it was just real bad. So, yeah.
You guys got Powercraft, okay? So there is a 4-mana flash creature counterspell that is played in Standard, and it's Urtai, who can stifle, who can destroy something. It's literally basically the same thing, but less hoops. You don't have to sack something, and it does more things. It doesn't fly, I guess, but Urtai sees play. So I think you got Powercraft. Urtai came out in Dominaria United.
Yeah.
We'll ignore the fact that Amalgam didn't see play between Vow and Dominaria United, but I still stand by you got Powercraft. I think there's a world where you try Overcharge Amalgam in either Azorius decks or Esper decks, where you have like wedding announcement tokens you can just chuck. Like you don't need zombies, right? You just have like random cycling creatures that you can chuck and try to counter, but you just play Urtai and it's just a lot easier. So
it's like when I bought all those copies of Crucible of the Spirit Dragon, and then they printed Haven of the Spirit Dragon the next set, which was just like strictly better at doing the same thing. Also, I don't think this is our worst pick because we were really high on Maniform Hellkite. I think like overall we had it number 2. I had it 5. Krim actually had it number 1 above Thalia. So we were like super high in Maniform Hellkite, and I think Maniform Hellkite seen even less play than Overcharged Amalgam, honestly.
What is that? What does that do?
Exactly. What does that do? It's the 4-mana 4/4 flying dragon that when you cast a 9-creature spell, you get an X dragon illusion creature with flying and haste, where X's amount of mana you spend on it until end of turn. Yeah.
On that mono red.
Well, dude, remember too, we were making
the reach your bird could have with this.
You got to remember we were making this video also when Alrund's Epiphany and Goldspan Dragon and Divide by Zero. This was like 40% of the meta or something. Like it was just all about these Izzet spell decks. So I think that might have. Maybe we had a little bit of recency bias or something where we're like, Izzet is so good, it'll be good forever. So this card's obviously going to be good too.
You know what I've concluded? We're always wrong on 4-drops.
Yeah.
and especially 4-drops that are 4/4 flyers. Like, we always like, there's so much value. And it's just like not good enough compared to like what the actual good 4-drops can do in the format. It's like that sneaky thing where you're like, that looks really good. How can this be bad? But then
well, let us show you how it can be bad.
Never again. All right, top omission from Crimson Vow.
We also got Wedding Announcement / Wedding Festivity. So essentially, play it in your aggro deck, get some card draw for 2 or 3 turns. Worst case, get a token, and then eventually flip it around into an Anthem. So I feel like when you read this card, you could see how it could be powerful. You're playing like White Weenie, you curve out your Chaplet of Alms into Clarion Spirit, into Wedding Announcement, and then you draw an extra card, and then you draw an extra card, and then you flip it and grow your Spirit tokens. The only problem is, something we talked about earlier, there's like a million good white 3-drops, and it might be that Wedding Announcement, even though you can see the synergies with white aggro and how perfect it is for a deck like that, maybe it just you can't find room with Elite Spellbinders and Redains and Brutal Cathards and Adeline and Skyclave Apparitions. So I think the card is sweet. I think it has a chance to see play. I like the flavor that it's showing off, but whether or not it's going to be super good in Standard, we're going to have to wait and see. Okay, yeah, I mean, it turns out there's a lot of good white 3-drops, but Wedding Announcement might just be the best of all of them.
Your concerns were right, though. There were a lot of good 3-drops, and the answer was it's just better.
Yeah, it is just better.
It's probably the best white card in Standard, period, right? I think maybe like Wandering Emperor or Wedding Announcement would probably be the contenders for best white card. And it shows up literally everywhere. Aggro, mid-range, control. Like anything that plays white can play Wedding Announcement. Like so well that like opponents have to play around it, right? Like you need you can't play Liliana anymore because people might play Wedding Announcement, right? So
that
was a little oopsie.
Yeah,
turns out 6 power that can't be like easily removed, and then Anthem's your team for 3 mana is pretty good rate in 2022.
It's all right. Yeah, I think it took off a little. It's fine. I'll admit that it might have. I'm gonna be honest with you. I didn't think that card would get played at all. Like, well, like why would it? Right? It's just like 1/1, okay, and a 1/1. I just didn't really think about how good it would be in this Standard. Like, Wedding Announcement is just absolutely cracked. Like, I just could not believe how strong it was. So, yeah, I'll admit that that one.
I'm surprised Krim wasn't higher. That's like Bitter Blossom that flips into an Anthem. Like, wow.
I did. Oh, no. That is. Is it that early? Are we throwing Bitter Blossom at this hour of the day right now? Is that what's going on?
It even shows up in like Pioneer and stuff too. Like that's how hard we missed. Is this even shows up outside of Standard?
I really didn't expect that.
Also,
really
Blood Tithe
didn't expect
Harvester.
that.
We did not mention
Oh,
Blood Tithe
God.
Harvester. Although, I don't know if many other people did either, so
It's an uncommon though, so it's easy to
look
skip
past
over.
it.
All right, Kamigawa Neon Dynasty top hits.
Number 2 on our list, we got another vehicle, Reckoner Bankbuster. Krim, what do you think about this one?
This isn't everything you want, right? Like, this is cheap. It's card advantage, right? It's a way to get you more just like of whatever you want it to be. And then when all those counters are gone, it doesn't like sack itself or anything like that. It's just like you get a full on just more stuff.
Yeah.
And so like this card is just one of those things where the value of this is just going to just take over games. And with the pilot tokens able to crew it, it's like crew 3 for a 4/4 for 2 mana. That's just drawing you cards anyways and then spawns more. That's it. Like this is all you can ask for at 2 mana. This is going above and beyond a 2 mana card here. This card is bonkers.
I mean, Treasure Map, standard staple of its era. Maze Mind's Tome, standard staple. These 2 mana artifacts that generate card advantage have traditionally been very playable, and this has a huge upside. It's a massive creature. Sure, crew 3 is kind of like a high number, but eventually it's going to crew itself. So I think we're going to be seeing Reckoner Bankbuster across a whole bunch of different archetypes. It just does a ridiculous amount for 2 mana, like so much text on the card. This card's so good. Let's move on. Number 1 on our list, little bit of cheating. We don't just have a card. We have an entire cycle of cards. The Channel Lands. You can see Boseiju, Atawara, 2 of the best of them, but really all of these cards I think are just going to see an immense amount of play in standard lands and new things. Every single one. Literally every single one of them is going to be a staple.
All right.
I mean,
Bankbuster is the top spell in all of standard in 73% of decks if people play it as a 3 of.
Yes.
I think we were even more right than we realized at the time, because this ended up being, I think, way better than Treasure Map or Maze Mind's Tome. The other versions of this ended up not only being as good as those, but like better than those. I think we also kind of lucked into the fact that standard just ended up being super grindy, because at the time, like, it was like white aggro versus Is It Dragons versus mono green aggro. It was like control versus aggro, and then we ended up in the standard that's just like mid-range slugfest, and a card like Bankbuster is just exactly what pretty much every deck wants when you're doing mid-range battles. It's 3 free extra cards, and it leaves behind some value. So yeah, I mean, we kind of nailed it. Maybe accidentally, but we definitely got there with that one.
It's a good call.
I still don't believe it today. It blows my mind that you can take turn 2 off, do nothing, and then continually sink 2 mana to draw cards and get away with it. Like, how bad is aggro that like we're allowed to do this? It still blows my mind that we can play this in 73% of decks.
It's funny though, because it actually makes me groan a little bit when I see it. Like, if you're playing and your opponent slams the turn 2 Bankbuster and you don't have something similar, like, oh, like this is not going to be very obvious on screen, but we're just like straight up losing this game because they're going to have 3 more cards than us, and then like 10 turns from now, this is really going to end up mattering.
Yeah. Like Bankbuster, just, it's the value that you like we initially mentioned, and then on top of that, it just actually will kill you, right? Like, and it's been good. It's been very good. So
yeah, I always forget it can attack too. You occasionally run into that opponent that's just like plays it on 2, and you're thinking, oh, they're gonna draw a bunch of cards, and then they like play Graveyard Trespasser on turn 3 and just crew and hit you for 4. And like, oh my god, I forgot it can do that. The thing is actually killing me. I thought it was just your card draw.
Yeah, like that's like it definitely feels like that. Whoa, where'd my health go? Right? Like I mean, and then also the amount of times I've board wiped and like, oh, we're fine. Oh wait, no, you can just play a creature and attack me. No.
All right, top miss from Neon Dynasty.
Number 3 on our list. Oh, this card's so good. Biting Palm Ninja. This card, I think, is wow.
This is not Thoughtseize. You're exiling it. That's
even
way major.
And you don't lose life, so it's an upgraded Thoughtseize. Krim, I know you love the ninjas. What do you think about Biting Palm Ninja?
This has to be like probably one of the top 3 cards for me, like in the whole set. Right? Yep. Just because of how efficient this card is. And knowing ninjutsu, it's very easy to return it back to your hand if you have more ninjas to do that with. We already see like Elite Spellbinder, right? We talked about that. We see cards like that get played. This is just better, I think. This is just going to be great.
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of the comparison I was going to make for Standard. We see Elite Spellbinder being a staple, and that doesn't even really get rid of the card. It just taxes it 2 mana, so eventually it's going to be cast anyway. I think that this is the best Ninja for Standard. This is the reason to build a Ninja deck for Standard. And more importantly, I think this card is so strong, I don't even think you have to be a Ninja deck. Like, if you're playing some sort of Golgari deck with a bunch of eye twitches and other just evasive creatures so you can ninjutsu this pretty consistently, I think this is good enough to see play in those decks as well. So I'm expecting to be seeing a lot of Biting Palm Ninja in Standard. It just does exactly everything you want it to do.
I'm like 90% sure people are going to complain about this card in about a month.
You noobs thinking Thoughtseize is good in 2020.
Yo,
come on.
Ninjutsu failed me. Okay,
Yeah,
Ninjutsu failed me. This doesn't count. Hold on, Ninjutsu.
It's kind of circle of loyalty in the sense that, like, ninjas just flopped as a whole.
Yeah.
But you said it could go outside ninjas, Seth. It's so good.
Oh, yeah, I blame Crim. I expect Crim to make the tempo cards good, like, you know, do the thought season, pick up something, counter your spell, but...
I just legitimately remember trying to force this, and every time it would just be bad. Like, man...
Yeah,
I don't know how this wasn't good. Like, I genuinely think ninjutsu just itself, the archetype, could have been so much more and end up being just really, really bad. And it's big sad. It's big sad. So
why do you think it flops so hard? Like, why is it just like the meta? Are the cards not good enough? Any ideas why ninjutsu just didn't make it this time?
So rogues had like Zareth, right? Rogues had all these big payoff, big top end things. Ninjas had nothing. Ninjas were more small, terrible ninjas, right? And like when you think about it now, look at the bodies that you're swinging into. Almost all of them efficiently block a ninja, right? So there's no evasiveness for you. And on top of that, let's talk about the Lord effect. Ninjas. Lord effects are great when you go wide, right? But like, how are you going wide with ninjas? You're constantly returning them back to your hand. So like the Lord effect wasn't good. There's no top end for ninjas. Yeah, it wasn't great.
And we never really got a good like Ninja the Deep Hours, right? Or like Ingenious Infiltrator. We got like the pseudo like one time looty one, but we were also missing that. So yeah, it still seems like it should be good. 3 mana 3/3 that thought seizes and lets you pick up something. Yeah.
Like, compare that to like, what if I just play Fable with the Mirror Breaker?
Ninjas are just too much work. I've played a lot of ninjas, and every game you're just like fighting and clawing for every point of damage. It is not easy when you could just, like you said, play a Fable Mirror Breaker, just run away with the game.
So you could connect with this in Standard, right? Because like Rafine decks have like a million creatures. You can easily connect with it. Evolved Sleeper, whatever that one drop is. No one ever blocks it because you can give it Death Touch or whatever, right? You can always get the ninjutsu in, right? But do you want to spend your third turn picking up your 1 or 2 drop and then just thought seizing and ending up with the 3/3? Like, there's just so many more powerful things you can be doing. And especially in Standard now where everyone's playing Jund, like, all their cards are good. Like, it doesn't matter what you thought seize. Like, it doesn't actually affect them, right? So in a mid-range mirror, thought seize is a bad card, and we are in mid-range fest. So maybe if we were in like a combo heavy meta or something, you can actually rip out that combo piece. That would actually be worth it. But right now, you're just playing a 3 mana 3/3 and then being very sad. And it only works once, right? You got to remove the menace counter from it or whatever, so you can't repeatedly thought seize them. So
That's a really good point. We're in such a good card style meta where everyone's just like playing a bunch of powerful cards in their meta. So everything's just so replaceable. You take the Shieldred, they got the Invoke Despair. You take the Invoke Despair, they still have the Corpse Appraiser or whatever. So I think that does make the value of something like this go down. Plus, like, decks have so much card advantage. It's not like you're really going to take your opponent out of the game with discard at this point because of Bank Busters and Corpse Appraisers, and just like everyone's always got a full hand action.
And that kind of also is another thing. Like, the ninjas, just like, there's no drown in the lock
or into the story. That was the other card that really put rogues over the top.
So like, there's just no good drown in the lock, and there's no good like card advantage engine, as you had mentioned. But most importantly, I still think that it's just painful that they really didn't give it a top game, like a top end kind of thing.
Wait, what set is that wall from that Thoughtseize is?
Oh,
The wall?
That's got to be
There's
one
like
of
a
the
2-mana wall that
concealing
you pay-
curtain that you pay
Yeah.
3 to transform. It's
Yeah,
one of
that's
the
like a
Innistrad
better
sets.
Biting Palm Ninja. Did that come before or after?
That was before, although no one really plays concealing curtain either, do they? Or not like very
There was
much.
a time where people played this in black decks, and I think it's just
That was
I guess they
Shadow-
get to replace the card. So this only like
that was
disrupts
one of the
combos, but
Innistrads.
Yeah,
Biting Palm
Crimson
actually puts
Vow.
them down.
Yeah.
But Concealing Curtains was saw play for a bit back when Standard first came out. So
Again, Ninjutsu just failed us.
Yeah.
Just saying, Ninjutsu failed, and it makes me sad.
all right, top omission.
Oh,
This
no.
says good look in it in the
Oh
notes. so
no,
let's see what
I'm gonna
this
get
means.
wrecked. I'm gonna get so wrecked. We also got, speaking of spicy sagas, Fable of the Mirror Breaker / Reflections of Kiki-Jiki. This one actually like quite a bit. But when you think through this card, it actually offers a decent amount of value. As far as comparisons, a little bit like a not very aggressive History of Benalia, but still getting 2/2/2s with some upsides out of a 3-mana saga. We've seen that be good in the past. So this is one I actually think has a chance to be good and constructed. The way I'm trying to evaluate these new sagas is kind of thinking of the backside as a bonus. The front side, I think, needs to stand on its own. And in the case of Fable of the Mirror Breaker, I think that it does. I think this pseudo-seasoned Pyromancer, even with the weird timing in the treasure token added on, I think that's enough to make me be interested in this card. And then eventually you get the pseudo-Kiki-Jiki. So don't think of this as a combo piece. I think this is a value card, and that's fine. Just like getting a copy of a Muldrifter, or a Fury, or in Standard, a Goldspan Dragon. That's a ton of damage, a ton of treasures. Skyclave Apparition for more removal, like that's good enough. And I think that's where this card shines. It's a reasonable saga on its own. And then the backside, even a Kiki without any combo potential, that's still just a really sweet value card. So this might be one of my favorite sagas so far, and one of the ones that I actually think has the highest chance of seeing tournament level play, actually being a competitive card. Even just a value heavy Kiki-Jiki is still a really neat card.
You nailed it. So the reason it's an omission, so that came from a spoiler
It's
video,
not on our
and
list, yeah.
None of you
Right.
guys decided to put it on the top 10 list at all.
But I
Sam
talked
liked
about
it.
it pretty positively. I liked it. I could see the value, and I was pretty down on sagas in general too. But this was the
Same.
one that I thought was good. Although this next one I'm like already dreading. Like I don't. That's not
you
like
know
the
the next
worst
one? Okay,
submission.
we'll
I'm
get-
guessing
we'll get-
what I know. I'm guessing.
We'll get the next one too. This one says bad look, so we'll see.
Yeah.
Like-
I know.
I still
We
think
also
though,
got
like
Invoke Despair, which, as cool as this card is, pretty sure it's a bulk rare. So essentially, let's say you cast this for 5 mana. Your opponent has a creature. They don't have an enchantment or a planeswalker. Your opponent's going to sack a creature. They're going to lose 4 life. You're going to draw 2 cards. Is that worth it? I'm not actually sure. I lean towards no, especially considering the 4 black and the mana cost. That is a really restrictive mana cost. Plus, it's 5 mana removal and it's at sorcery speed. It is nice that you're always going to get some value. But let's say your opponent has nothing to sacrifice. This is 5 mana. You draw 3 cards. Your opponent loses 6 life. Even that's not really exciting. No matter what combination I think of with this card, none of them makes me excited to actually cast this card. Although it is mentioning yet another black enchantment destruction spell. This one definitely power down, I think, compared to Feed the Swarm, since it's an edict and it's pretty expensive. But still, it seems like we keep getting more black enchantment destruction pretty much every set. So Invoke Despair got pretty epic art. It's one of the promos for the set. As far as being playable, I'm just really not seeing it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I ranked it the worst of all the Invoke cycle. Me and Krim both had Invokes on our list for that set, but mine was the green
Yeah.
one that made 2 tokens. Krim really liked the red one that like has spells from your graveyard.
So you chose all the unplayable invokes, okay.
Yes. If there's any
Hey.
tiny bit of defense, we didn't know that black was going to be like 75% of the standard meta at the time, so that definitely helped the decks be able to cast this spell. But even not knowing that, wow, that's probably my biggest miss of the year. We'll see if anything else can top that. But I
mean-
knew when we were talking about this episode, I was like, oh no, I'm going to get wrecked on Invoke Despair.
it's funny how like 3 color decks. The Grixis deck is playing Invoke, right? Like
it's got pretty epic art though. I know that part.
The art is epic. Also, the the saga, the Fable, dude. I thought all the sagas were like just like meh, and like man, the red one I guess was also the most playable, so that wasn't too bad. That was a good call on your part. But most importantly, this daily spoiler was on my birthday.
Hey. Yeah,
I was extremely wrong about Invoke Despair on my birthday.
So are those like two of the best cards from Kamigawa, probably? Like Fable and Invoke Despair. Like, at least currently, they're probably the two best cards from the set, and we did not have them on our top 10 list.
I mean, so Fable I could see, because Fable we were kind of pigeonholed into like, it's Kiki Chiki or whatever, and you're like, what's the combo here? But it's actually just, here's a goblin token. If you don't remove it, you're gonna die, right?
Yeah,
and then, you removed it. I'm gonna loot too, all right?
Yeah.
And then, there's another thing you need to remove. Did you have 2 pieces of removal?
That card.
But Seth, there was a clean answer to Fable, and that was Invoke Despair. You can get them in a sack. The creature, the enchantment, their planeswalker or whatever. Invoke is so strong, and I don't think anyone saw it coming, right? Because essentially what happens is, if your opponent has creatures, right, and they're like, they have Meatball Massacre. I don't want to commit more creatures, so I'll play non-creature permanents. What is that, a Planeswalker maybe? Maybe an enchantment? And then the Evoke comes down and wraths you into oblivion, right? You play more creatures, you get meatballed. You play nothing, and you just lose 6 life, and they drew 3 cards, perfect for the mid-range mirror. So it turns out it's so good that, like Krim said, even Grixis plays Invoke Despair. Not just like 1. Like 3 and 1 in the sideboard, right? Like, so even 3-color decks are playing Invoke Despair. It's that strong.
Quad black, huh?
Also,
we have
I
Triumph, so it's all fixed.
I think it also benefits from just how slow and grindy the meta is. Like, if there was an aggro deck, a real, like, good mono red deck, if that was a real thing, it seems like Invoke would get a lot worse. Because that's how you would punish, I think, the play pattern of Invoke. But those decks just haven't been good enough. So when everyone's just, grinding mid-range battles, the card's absurd. To the point where people have been, like, asking for it. It's been one of those fringe ban asks, even, where you see people bring it up, like, oh no, is this card too good for standard? Like, that's how good it ended up being. Well, oops.
Yeah. The white one sees
it was
play,
all right.
And then I don't know what the green or red one or blue ones do, because I've never seen them, but those are the ones you guys chose for some reason. But white, you're almost there, because white and black see play, and then the other ones don't. So it's possible that they see play.
I remember losing to the green one after it was first printed. It just like makes 2 4/5 tokens. So back when mono green was a thing, like there were times when that was actually a card. But
we were right about the blue one, though. It wasn't good in standard at all.
No. What does the blue one do?
It
steals something, right? Artifact or creature,
just one?
I think. Yeah, it steals a thing.
Oh, yeah. There's no value there.
And the red one's kind of flopped too. No one's really managed to make that one work.
Technically, it did get played though in that Grixis spells deck, and it would kill you with Maestro's charm.
Oh,
the all spells deck, the all spells control deck.
That's interesting. Well, speaking of Maestro's charm, I think Streets of New Capenna's next.
All right, Capenna top hit.
Rafine Scheming Seer. And this card, oh my goodness, this card is just so crazy. So the first thing I thought of when I saw this is, you play a 1-drop, you play a 2-drop, you follow it up with Rafine, you attack with your 2 creatures, you get to put potentially 2 counters on things, and you get to loot, so you're filling your graveyard along the way, digging to find more action. This card seemed bonkers to me. We've talked about that Esper Tempo deck. Like, this is the reason to play Esper Tempo. This is like the card that leads that, and we got so many good white support cards. White is already the dominant color in standard, so it's got tons of fuel for this archetype. But Krim, I'm rambling on. What do you think about Rafine?
This is like I really hope we're not wrong on this, but I legitimately feel like this is just an absolute house, right? This card is very well, like efficiently costed, right? It curves out perfectly, allows you to get some early threats to immediately benefit from the connive, right? That at first I thought this was bad because I thought it had to attack, but no, yeah, this is so much better, and the Ward 1 is more relevant than you think. And it's a good body. It's a 1/4. It doesn't get frostbitten. It doesn't, there's a lot that it has going for it.
I don't know. Hopefully we're not wrong on this one, but this is one of the cards that I think has the best chance to be the centerpiece of like a top tier deck in standard out of our whole list, honestly.
All right, we should pin this on our channel because you guys were not right for just one standard, but two standards.
Yes.
On the board.
Through rotation.
I mean,
Ruffy,
yeah.
It's been top the whole time.
Yeah, I mean, it is a card that powered its own deck, essentially. Like, the Esper deck is a Rafine deck. If it wasn't for Rafine, you wouldn't be playing decks like Esper Legends and some of these Esper, like, creature decks. So, yeah, I mean, I think we kind of nailed it. And that card is still very, very good. And as Krim said, the word 1 does matter more than you think. Sometimes that actually ends up being pretty. It doesn't seem like a big number, but there's times when it just, like, makes your removal not work the way you want it to, or you can't play 2 things in a turn. So, yeah, Rafine, I mean, super, super good.
Void Rend is just something that is like now also just like really like that ward 1 is so annoying that I just love Void Rend. That is such a godsend spell. I just don't care about Graveyard Trespasser. I don't care about any of those things. I just kill it.
Does anyone other than Krim play Void Rend? I'm so
Krim paid the tax. It's the same cost as Void Rend.
Dude, but it's so good. There ain't no way that you don't like, dude. Come on, that card is sick. The card is sick.
I mean, Void Rend was on both of our lists as well. If anything, that's maybe a miss because we had it ranked pretty highly and it hasn't really ended up seeing that much play. But we did have that there too, and it does get around Ward. You are correct.
It occasionally sees play. I mean, the only Esper deck that exists is the Rafine deck, and they don't want to play spells usually.
Yeah, you got Thalia.
Void Rend isn't
Thalia
that popular,
issues.
but I've seen Void Rend pop up here and there.
I play it in Control, but that's just because I still play Control.
Do you play Rafine Control?
No, I don't even have Rafine in the deck.
All right, top miss from Capenna.
To number 6 on our list. Speaking of really good removal, we have Endless Detour, kind of a super ether gust almost.
What's that card do?
This almost makes me want to bring Adopt Green into my decks, right? Like, I almost thought about dropping black for this. Like, this card is good.
You know a card's good when Krim considers adding green to his control decks.
Yeah. I like, look at that. Like, this is exactly what you want. Now, holy cow, if you can get this on 3, this is amazing. The fact that, again, you can hit something in the yard, right? Like, what? That's absurd. This card hitting graveyards is absolutely cracked. You have target spell, so it interacts on the stack. It bounces a non-land permanent, so your creature lands are safe, but like, holy cow. I don't even know the new name for Bant, but there's a reason for me to roll with the Bant family. It's single-handedly on this card.
Oh yeah, this is the reason to play Bant in Standard, I think, and it's really good. Like, as you mentioned, the only problem with these 3-color cards is that they're 3 colors, and sometimes there's really powerful 3-color cards that don't find a home just because their color combination never takes off. So we'll have to wait and see.
I mean,
I've
okay,
never seen
to
this
be
card
fair,
cast ever. Ever.
that card would be good if the brokers were good, okay? And 2 things. I now improvement. I remember the new Bant family name, the brokers. So that's the other thing.
I think Seth was right though, right? Like you never know that green is going to be hot trash, the standard rotation, and that brokers suck. I mean, I guess there was like Broker's Ascendancy type decks, which got wrecked by Meatball Massacre, so they were kind of rough. And then the Enchantments deck, which kind of just wants to play more enchantments and not this stuff. So yeah, maybe just Brokers never had a chance. Would this see play if it was like in Grixis or something? Like if it was a black-red X card?
Yeah.
Do you think it would see play?
I bet you if it were have had black somewhere in there, like if it were just like a blue-black spell or something, or maybe even just, like Grixis itself, I think it'd be fine, right?
Maybe. Although, like, black, part of the appeal is it's good removal in a color that doesn't have as much good removal. So I don't know if this was competing with all the black removal that we have, would it see play? But I do think the color issue is the biggest thing. Like, Bant just isn't a color combination in the Standard. Like, no, it's in not just 1 but 2 of the wrong colors, being blue and green. Like, those are just not colors that really see any play.
Good, the Standard?
So I know. This is like Krim heaven. Grixis amazing. Yeah, like, Simic
I'm happy
bad.
I'm wrong.
Like, no
I'm happy
Krim
I'm wrong.
A Standard.
Yeah.
I gotta ask you before we move on, Richard. I remember, I don't have a clip for this because I didn't do the clips. I remember during our podcast for Streets of New Capenna, you were going crazy about Ob Nixilis. Like, this is bannably good. It's going to break moderns. Well, how is this not the best Planeswalker of every time? How do you feel about Ob Nixilis now and where it's actually ended up a year later?
The internet.
I need to search Ob Nixilis because I haven't seen one cast. Like, let me figure out what Ob Nixilis actually does. Oh, wait. Ob Nixilis saw a little bit of play. Bit of play.
But I remember you being like, it's Oko level good, like just like one of the best planeswalkers of all time good, and I don't think it quite ended up there.
Yeah, no,
it definitely did not.
Definitely did not. But that clip doesn't exist. So I don't know what you're talking about. But yeah, I think it saw play in like Anvil decks, and people tried it. But yeah, I mean, it's not Oko.
And
your
defense,
remember
we also ranked it highly. It was in our top 3s too. So we also liked it at the time. So it's not just you.
Right. And on top of that, the internet, like what, by the end of like early access event already was asking for it banned. So it looked good in early access.
This is especially egregious because like Rakdos and Black Red are the most played, like, Grixis,
it's in the right colors.
like the Mardu, like this is like the most played color in all of Standard, and this card doesn't see anything, right? Like Brokers, I could give a pass, right? But even mono green or mono red, you're like, who would have foreseen that these decks don't exist? But Black Red is everywhere in Standard, and this sees no play. So this is a terrible miss.
A good reminder that Punisher cards are traditionally not good, and we all managed to overlook the Punisher aspect, I think, of Ob Nixilis and focus on 3 mana, like double copies of it, and it's still a Punisher card when it comes down to it.
Yeah. All right. This one's
Yay.
good. There's a note here, not just for Standard. Okay.
The note
We
helps.
also got a
The note
conniving card in Ledge Shredder. So this is a pretty interesting blue 2-drop. So this is essentially a 2-mana 1/3 that should quickly grow, and it has flying in the right deck. So I'm imagining in Standard, this could be great in some sort of Delver shell, where you play this, if you're playing Delver, you're going to have all these Considers and cheap spells that you're casting multiples of in a turn. So hopefully by the next turn after you play this, it's going to be a 2/4 flying that also was going to let you loot, which is pretty beneficial, and then it triggers on any player casting their second spell. So it's going to keep growing throughout the game as you cast your spells and your opponent casts your spells, which is really strong. There might even be a chance that it can show up in like Arclight Phoenix decks, maybe in like the historic format. Is it better than something like Sprite Dragon? We'll have to wait and see. It doesn't grow as quickly as Sprite Dragon, but it has better starting stats, and conniving, the looting mode, is a great way to get things like Arclight Phoenix in your graveyard. So I'm really high on the connive mechanic, and I think Ledge Shredder is a pretty decently statted creature with evasion that comes down early. Is definitely a pretty good example of how this mechanic can be really powerful.
I think this was
Shredder.
Exactly.
Ledge Shredder.
This is a move. There's collusion somewhere by the community. It's because Seth said that the card's name wrong, so chat and the entire community went all in to make Seth know its name, and they made it good.
I did not have Ledge Shredder on my top 10 list, but I have not seen any deck lists with Ledge Shredder in there either, so I think maybe we're fine. I just Googled it and nothing comes up, so
you're good. You're safe, Seth.
Really, okay, 2 takeaways here. One is literally everyone missed this card. This was like a 50-cent card that shot up to a ton of money when it was really good in every format. So we definitely missed it, but I think everyone else did too. I think my takeaway so far of this year of spoiler reviews is don't underestimate 2-drops that loot. Like Blood Tithe Harvester, we missed. Ledger Shredder, we missed. Rafine's Informant even has become like a playable card back to Pioneer, and in Standard as well, is just a 2-drop that ETBs connives. So in the future, for the next set spoilers, I'm definitely going to be keeping my eye out for cards like that, because I think those are cards that just tend to punch above their weight. And Ledger Shredder is like the biggest example of that. That card's so good.
I would say Ledger Shredder definitely punches well beyond its weight class. This card is so good now. Holy cow.
I am glad I mentioned Phoenix in older formats, though, because it did end up seeing play there. I was like kind of right, even though I wasn't nearly as high in as I should be. But that is a deck that it showed up in.
I mean, it goes back to Modern. Did it ever make it to Legacy? Or did Initiative stomp that out? Let me see. No one plays Ledger Shredder. Nope. Murktide is the thing. But yeah, like even seeing Modern play, It's crazy. Right?
Yeah.
We're thinking of like, oh, how do we pump it? How do we combo off and like make it big? What it really is, it's just like every turn it grows. It's a better Tarmogoyf, but it also like stacks as your opponents, right? Like they cannot play 2 spells, otherwise it grows your Ledger Shredder even bigger. And then it also gets out of lightning bolt range immediately. If you play it and follow up with a bobble or whatever. So yeah, all the way back to modern. Yeah, standard kind of mediocre, right? Like only the blue deck, like the mono blue.
Yeah.
Tempo / used to be Delver but no longer plays Delver deck plays it.
Yeah, it lines up better in older formats, I think. It's seen a little fringe standard play, but definitely like modern Pioneer, I think, is the high point for Ledger Shredder, where those like the free spells really help, like you said. Like that's a really big deal. And it is amazing just like how much consistency this adds to your deck, because this is just, it's so easy to trigger. It's one of those cards that rewards you for doing what you want to do anyway, which is just like play your stuff. And it just gives you so much extra value.
Yeah. All right. Dominaria United.
Oh boy.
Top hit, I
guess. Haunty Jin. I think that Haunty Jin has a chance to be pretty good as a finisher in some sort of like blue, mono blue, maybe blue X tempo style deck, where this can get really, really big, really, really fast, as we've seen with cards like Enigma Drake or Crackling Drake. But I'm curious, Kim, what do you think about this one? You're a blue mage. What do you think about Haunty Jin in standard?
I think that this card is not nearly as powerful as the Jin in Blue Devotion was. Only because like when we come to like power level, but I do like the spell reduction on it. So I think that's where it makes up for it. However, I don't know, right? Like I think this is like decent. This is another card that just narrowly missed out on my list. So it looks fun, but I don't know. We'll have to see. I like this one. It was one of the ones where I felt a little shakier on.
Haunty Jin.
Haunty Jin, yeah.
Haunty Jin.
Haunty Jin.
This is number 9. That means this is the best card we could get on this list at number 9. What are the 8 cards you put above this one? But
we don't need to talk about that one.
Yeah.
we don't need to talk about that one.
We're running a little long. Podcast over. Let's not get into that.
This makes an entire archetype, right? This has to count for something. It's much better than like some some random tech card slotted somewhere. this propped up an entire deck and pushed out everyone's favorite Delver. You don't need to play Delver in your blue deck because you have Auntie Jin here that just like actually just like two shots people.
Jin.
I mean, yeah, it made an entire deck around itself, and it is the best card in that deck. And that deck was actually really good at one point. I think Mono Blue has kind of faded a little bit recently since we've gotten Brothers War, but between Dominaria United and Brothers War, this was like the best budget deck and a legit option to fight through like the Meat Hook Massacre decks. That's where that deck really shined, was before Meat Hook got banned. Oh, this was such a good way to punish those black decks. So yeah, I mean, I guess it's a hit, but we probably should have had it even higher on our list.
All right, top miss from Dominaria.
We were high on Liliana for standard, but we're even higher on another Planeswalker, Jaya Fiery Negotiator, which just has a ridiculous amount of abilities. It's got 4 abilities. It protects itself with tokens. It generates cards advantage. It removes things. To me, this feels like exactly what you want in a standard playable. I think Jaya is going to be one of the better Planeswalkers in standard, but Krim, what do you think?
Yeah, like it's got 4 abilities like you had mentioned, and the token isn't just any token. It's a 1/1 token with prowess. So like these tokens are like, it's got a little bit of a Monastery Mentor love attached to it, right? So yeah, and it comes down where, as opposed to like the Ob Nixilis, kind of like the vanilla 5-drop Planeswalker, this is a 4-drop. So this is a very, very solid cost for what it's doing. And the abilities give it a lot of versatility. This card just seems really good. It feels almost like it's not quite Chandra Torch of Defiance, but it is still very good for standard.
Yeah, I don't think it's that. I think it's the closest we've seen to a Chandra Torch of Defiance on Chandra. I don't think it's as good as Chandra, but I don't think we've had another Planeswalker that has been close to Chandra since we got Chandra several years ago. And Jaya's like, it's the closest that we've gotten.
All right. So 4 mana Planeswalkers with like 4 abilities are usually a miss.
I just don't think we're allowed to talk about 4 drops. I think we've banned. We've legitimately like missed every 4 drop.
I'm going to use my let's check back next year on this one because
Yeah.
I still think that
you're doubling
Jaya,
down. You're doubling down on this. Okay.
I still think that Jaya is actually a good card. It hasn't been the right meta for it. It's been such a black heavy meta. There haven't been red decks. There haven't really been outside of mono blue like Spellslinger style decks that take advantage of prowess. So as the meta shifts and we get a couple more sets, I think Jaya's still got a chance to be good. It still reads like a strong card to me. So let's check back and see if this is maybe the bloodthirsty adversary this year. Because
I'm snapping on this. I'm snapping.
You're doubling down.
I'll snap back.
No,
I'm snapping back.
we got Grixis mid-range, Mardu mid-range, and Rakdos mid-range at the top of the meta, and Jaya can't find a home. Like, there's no world in which she comes back from this.
Deck. She's not for a mid-range deck, though. She has 4 abilities and shares the cost as Chandra, but is not meant for a mid-range. She is definitely meant for like a
aggro?
Like top end of aggro, I think, or some sort of Spellslinger deck is
Why
probably
would you be making a 1/1 monk at the top end of red aggro here?
I mean,
give it a minute. Just give it a minute.
Like you flood the board, you get creatures, you get removal, you get card draw. It'll give it time, Richard. Give it time. It's gonna get there.
We gotta cut our losses and scoop. You know, we can't. I don't know about this. I don't know about this hill to die on here. This Jaya. Like maybe if we had, even if we had a spell heavy deck, would you actually like? Let's say you took mono blue temple or whatever, change it to Is It? Would you play this?
I mean, to me, it hits all the marks that you want in a planeswalker. Like defends itself, card advantage, removal, emblem that probably wins the game. Like it has all the pieces that I feel like you want. So I still blame it on the metagame. I still feel like this like has the right pieces to make it work. It just hasn't lined up right with the meta.
It has a chance. It has a chance. It's I believe. I believe that it can come back. I believe that it also can come back.
Chris, yes.
That's right. Nicely to Santa here.
But I will not deny for now, like having a number 2 on our list looks pretty bad. Like we definitely whiffed at this point for sure.
Just when everyone says, whenever brings up Jace the Mind Sculptor, just run out of the room. That's it.
Yeah, maybe 4 mana planeswalkers are a trap, or
Same
4
with
ability
Oko.
planeswalkers
If anyone
are
says
a trap.
this is the next Oko or Jace the Mind Sculptor, just nope out of there.
Yeah, like the new comp.
Right.
That's the next Oko apparently because it has so much loyalty. Yeah,
top of mission.
About that.
All right, Children, the Apocalypse.
What is this?
Hey,
like, okay, I'm not talking Commander. In Commander, this is awesome. I think this is a fun card there. I'm talking 60 card constructed here. We're talking standard. This is like doo-doo, right? Like this is. It doesn't even draw me an additional card. Like it doesn't even trigger itself.
It is a 4-mana 4/5 Death Touch. It is a body.
I don't think it's bad.
Like, no. Okay, let me rephrase. I think it is bad for a Sheoldred. I mean, like so what? Like you play this and then what? Right? Like I just spent 4 mana for a 4/5.
It's
I
Siege
feel
Rhino.
like this is actually a good card. Like I feel like so. I get what Crim's saying because my impression is like it doesn't feel epic to me, and I was expecting the Praetors to feel more epic, like these huge, flashy like effects. And Sheoldred doesn't feel like that, but I feel like from a more spiky perspective, isn't this like a decent card? Like I don't know, I feel like it's just like a random mid-range threat. I would play this in a standard deck. I think.
Funny enough, like this doesn't pass the. Like, give me a Siege Rhino.
Dies to Doomblade.
Okay, well, actually doesn't die to Doomblade.
Okay, it doesn't die to Doomblade technically, right? But essentially, so if you play this and you get to untap with it, it's like kind of Siege Rhino, right? You, assuming your opponent drew 1 card and you draw a card, you dealt 2 damage, gain 2 life. It's a 4/5 Death Touch. The problem is it's legendary, so if you have multiple of these, you get flooded. It actually dies to removal quite easily. So I actually think it kind of sucks. Like you just play it and then hope your opponent draws a bunch of cards and then they die. Like is that the game plan with this?
Make
like,
them
they're
make
digging
draw
for
cards.
an answer, right? And they're like drawing 5 cards and they die and I got you, right? Like is that what's going on? Like it doesn't seem strong enough for today's standard. We'll have to see what the standard looks like. But a 4-mana 4/5 Death Touch, would you play that?
No,
that seems like an uncommon.
Yeah,
right.
That's the problem. Like it doesn't do anything.
right?
Remember Reaper of the Wild, Seth? That was a 4-mana 4/5 touch.
Yeah, but this is like stabilizing you against
man.
aggro. It's draining your opponent with direct damage.
Yeah.
I think the drain ability, I think you're underrated. Like, I feel like you play this against mono red or mono white and you just slam it and it's a body they can't easily get through and you're gaining 2 a turn, which means they're not going to be able to burn you out or whatever. I don't know. I guess.
I'll buy that.
Mono white can get through this
Yeah.
pretty easy.
Whew.
Seth,
So
why
about
did
that-
you save us harder?
I tried a
liked
little.
the card here. It didn't
So
make it on any top
about
10
that.
list. I said it's not worth an uncommon. Crim's talking about 60 card formats, to be clear here.
It is uncommon. It is, by the way, I need this uncommon. So it's like $60.
How much of it do you think it is that our brains have been trained from the last few years that good threats in standard are those snowball threats that we talked about at the beginning of the cast, and that's what we're looking for in really good cards is like, oh, the ETB trigger that does something right away. The thing that like I play on 2 and it just runs away with the game if you can't kill it. And Shieldred, if you're looking at it in that context, it does look kind of fair. Like, it doesn't do anything right away. It's got to sit out. If it sits out, like, it's incremental, life gain and drain, but not doing anything huge and splashy right away. Do you think that's part of it? That we're just like, we're always looking for these snowball threats, and that's just not what Standard's power level is anymore? Like, Wizards has pulled back on the power level, and that's made Shieldred so good?
Yeah.
Or are we just
Yeah,
bad at 4 drops? Does it just come back to that? If it's a 4 drop, we just gotta shut up. Stop.
I still don't
evaluating.
believe it's good. I've learned nothing. So the one thing that I mocked during that clip was like, it's easy to remove things, but you need to do a lot of cycling and card drawing in standard, right? So a lot of the times, Shieldred comes down. You have a lot of ways to look at more cards, but you're gonna die because Shieldred's on the battlefield. So
Yep.
yes, you could get there, but you're gonna lose a lot of life. And I think that's what I underestimated. But I still think it dies to Doomblade. I've
Doesn't
learned
die to
nothing
Doomblade.
apparently.
Doesn't tie to Toonblade.
Like it like hoses red, right? Like if you can't remove this card, like it's doo-doo, right? But if you're holding like a Void Rend or a Go for the Throat or whatever, Shieldred's nothing, right? And it shows that because Shieldred's like a 1 or 2 of in most decks. I think that's just like an aggro check. But you still keep it against mid-range. You don't sideboard it out usually. So I don't know. I don't understand mid-range anymore, apparently. I don't understand 4 drops. I will just refrain from commenting because I remember Reaper of the Wild. It was a 4-mana 4/5 Death Touch and Golgari. I'm like, this is it. Everyone thought that
so
card
good.
was the next thing, and it was a terrible flop.
Did
And
nothing.
Shieldred looks like that, but it was like meta defining. Like people were warping their decks around Shieldred in standard. So this is our greatest omission, I think.
I will say it definitely was a big omission, but I'll have you know because when this came out and up to this point playing standard, I have played control and I've just killed it every time. It doesn't matter to me.
Crim just Void Rends it, so Void Rend clearly better than Shieldred.
Yeah, that was the thing that I noticed we didn't mention. But no, it is a big omission, right? Because when I'm not playing a control deck, I'm like, this is the most broken card I've ever seen in my life. How does this thing work?
Yeah,
oh my god!
It is currently 56% of decks in standard, which is just like an insane rate for a creature like this. So yeah, we definitely missed on that pretty hard. I mean, in hindsight, if we were going to do a redraft of Dominaria United, this would just be number 1, right? Like out of all the cards in the set, this would be number 1 for standard.
What did we have at number 1?
Sarah Paragon, which actually is not horrible, but it's not Shieldred.
Yeah.
And Shivan Devastator, we also had that number 2. Give it time.
I think
Mono
we
red
just stopped
will rise from the
commenting on
ashes.
4 drops.
Yeah. Yeah, apparently we're pretty bad at that because we had Jaya really high and Shieldred not there at all. So yeah, don't trust our advice on 4 drops anymore.
All right, we're running long, but before we end, we have to do the one thing. And what is our wish list for 2023? What do we want to see now that they have fixed standard? What should we see in 2023?
I want to see Modern. I want to see Modern change. Modern isn't bad right now, but we've been dealing with the same handful of Modern Horizons 2 cards for the past almost 2 years now, and it's just getting very samey. You see the same few cards again and again and again, over and over and over. Whether this means unbanning some stuff, which would be probably my preference, like reevaluate the ban list, get some stuff out of there that might be powerful enough to shake up new decks, whether it means banning stuff, whether it means Lord of the Rings being super overpowered and power creeping MH2 out of the meta. I don't care how you do it, Wizards. Actually, don't do that last one, hopefully, but I don't care how you do it, but let's get a shake up.
Curling, Seth. Gandalf is here to save the day.
Gandalf and Optimus Prime, just like the magic the way Garfield intended. At this point, I'll take it. If it means not dying to a Ragavan again, that's fine.
I want to see Pure Control. I want to see Pure Control come back. I want to see Pure Control come back in Standard. Modern, I'm sorry. At this point, I don't know if Modern is fixable. I've made this known. I think I've fallen out of love with Modern recently. It's just not the format it was, and like I just don't feel like it's as fun anymore. So I guess all I can ask for is Pioneer or Explorer, I guess, by association and whatnot. But like, I hope these formats continue to stay fun. I hope they eventually ban like Shrine to Nyx or Journey, whatever, the land, Nykthos. Like that. It just doesn't feel great. Like knowing that like this format has Nykthos, and maybe something will eventually change it up to where it's not just Rakdos.
I think Modern is beyond repair at this point, because on one hand, you have the camp of people that are like, I don't want Modern to change. You should keep Modern static and like not change. I don't want to buy new decks. And then on the other hand, you have people saying, wow, Modern is so boring. I've played the same Modern for a year now. Please rotate it for me with Modern Horizons 3. And you have these two groups of people, and you can't make them both happy. So I think Modern will be forever up for like complaining.
Yeah.
I would like to see Universes Beyond in Standard. So rather than Gandalf wreak havoc in Modern,
Interesting.
he should wreak havoc in Standard and then rotate out and be never seen again. Right? Like if you're gonna do these cool crossovers like Transformers, like I want to play them in Standard. Like there's no real place to play them, and then they will rotate. So if you get sick of it, they just leave and it'll be fine, right? So.
Would they
that happen then Modern?
Would they be legal in Pioneer and Modern, or would this be like Standard Horizons or something where they're only legal in Standard?
No. They'll be legal in older formats, but they'd be tuned for Standard. So, under the old game, like they most likely would not see any Modern play, but under the new design, they'd probably dominate every format going back to Vintage. So, but just strong enough for Standard, but not strong enough for Modern and Legacy and whatnot. And then just throw them into Standard, be hype about it, and then have them rotate out, and then we'll never see them again. So
that would be interesting. That would be interesting. I still worry about Pioneer being impacted by it, but I guess if they're of a safe Standard power level, maybe it'd be fine.
Yeah. All right. So that wraps up 2022 year in review. I feel we had a lot of misses this year. I don't know that we all saw like black-based mid-range fest for Standard. I think that kind of threw off everything. Like green unplayable, blue is basically a splash color. It's not a very balanced pie.
What a shakeup, huh? What a shakeup, huh?
I mean, green is bad, Krim. What do you want?
I'm happy. I'm happy I'm wrong. Like, I'm happy for this past year. Like, Standard's good. Like, I'm thriving in this Standard. This is amazing. So, you know what? I can't ask for any more.
Yeah. Next year we'll be more careful with our 4-drops.
No 4-drops, no Jace the Mind Sculptors, no Okos, okay? And then there's like some random 2-drop that looks like hot trash. It's probably S tier.
It's probably good, yep. Those are the takeaways. So anyway, I think that brings us to the end of today's podcast. Richard, if people want to send in fish mail for 2023, how should they do that?
All right, you can send them to @MTGGoldfish with the hashtag MTGFishmail on Twitter, and we'll get to your questions on air.
So anyway, everyone, that brings us to the end of episode 413 of the MTG Goldfish podcast, and actually the end of 2022 podcast as well. So we will be back next year to talk about whatever goes on in the world of Magic. Thanks to Richard and Krem for hanging out. Thanks to everyone for listening. Thanks to Card Conduit for supporting the show. So everyone, have an amazing New Year's, and yeah, we'll see you next week. Until then, this is a crew signing out.